Eldred de Klerk. Let's go back to the monies then, Eldred. And these are, again, eye-watering sums. Senzo Mchunu allegedly receiving 500K from Madlanga to support his presidential ambition. Shadrach Sibia, suspended DNC, receiving apparently an eye-watering million a month, including 2 million in cash to buy a mid-rand property, as well as getting 300K, as the allegation goes, for his son's wedding. Major General Richard Shibiri, his name coming up, the head of the SAP's Organised Crime Unit, 80,000 rand from Madlanga to celebrate his promotion. Major General Feroz Khan, head of SAP's counterintelligence, allegedly demanding 2.5 million rand. Madlanga is claiming to have paid him 500,000, and then Brown Mkhotsi as well in the mix, making these payments happen. So two questions arise. Eldred de Klerk, is the banking section of all of this and the scrutiny that the banks now need to come under in solidifying this evidence that was given, but also the question of whether these individuals named should be subjected to a lifestyle audit and an opening of their financial lives. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Iman, and good morning all. Clearly, Iman, we got to follow the money, as the proverbial saying goes. Also, you're absolutely right. You're standing with the South African Reserve Bank behind you. The bank has a role to play. The Financial Intelligence Center has a role to play, because there's a simple account, Iman. There's a certain amount, I think it's 10,000 rand, I speak under correction, that I cannot, anything more than that in cash has to be investigated, or if not investigated, at least accounted for. You got to say where that money coming from, and you got to explain how you're spending that, who you're sending that money to, and how's it to be spent. So there's a clear path now going forward to follow the money, consider how a single individual was able to give such exact amounts to senior officials, public representatives who are in a position to do favors for them. So that is something that seriously has to be investigated. Iman, furthermore, you were alluding to the fact that we're probably going to hear much more of the same. And this sets up tensions within the police divisions themselves, because there are various divisions within the police who need to cooperate to be able to pursue a case and successfully look to convict somebody of either serious financial crime or particular criminal activities, or of corruption and complicity. So we're looking forward to today's testimony. What we are likely to hear is more of the same, and a deepening of the story and an understanding of what exactly is at play.
There's a dovetailing in these themes between what we're hearing here and at the Ad Hoc Committee and South African life, Eldred, when we think about the double payments that South Africans make, both in taxes and in the procurement of private services. And this leads me to ask questions about CIRA. This is the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority, and the blowing up of the private security industry in South Africa. South Africans shouldn't have to pay for private security when we are already paying for police services. Given what we have seen, the hollowing out of those services, the lack of doing the job that you are called up to do as men and women in blue, means that South Africans have to look to other places to secure their security. What are your thoughts on that?
Indeed, Iman, it's a double tax and a double burden, and it comes at a large percentage of someone's regular income that's already has to go into just the cost of living. The more worrying thing that we hear from these officers is just not that the private security sector has ballooned, but where do they actually get their capability from and their capacity? They basically purge it, steal it, or entice it from officers trained with public money, gaining their experience either within the South African Police Service, the intelligence community, or the SANDF. So we spend hundreds of thousands of rand on preparing, capacitating, resourcing, and providing experience, supervision, and support for officers to be able to do their work. Private security circumvents all of those by just providing an ongoing, sustainable income and an enticing income to individuals who's already been trained. So they've taken their capacity from the state, and therefore they're hollowing out the state. But we've also had members of these entities go and set up a private security service, and basically just move members with them when they go there, because they understand that there's a gap and there's a need that needs to be filled. And the perception is that the state entity, the public service enterprise, or the public service unit, cannot provide for our safety and security.
You know, we're standing here, and while I'm a fan of symbolism and metaphor, Eldred, standing at the Union buildings asking questions outside the President's office here, questions that were asked, for example, in the Citizen newspaper this morning. Where were you looking, Mr. President? The buck stops with you. Talk to us about the recommendations already on the President's table with regard to concerns in the police and the need to expeditiously move and situate the criminal justice cluster firmly and center it into the developmental agenda of the country. But not only that, the liability that the presidency bears essentially in this ongoing saga of hollowing out. I mean, these are serious things. These are not allegations made about Mickey Mouse members of the police service. These are serious senior officials, both on the political side and on the operational side of the SAPS. What do you make of how the president has handled all this? Of course, people will say, let's give him credit. He set up this commission of inquiry quite quickly after Mkwanazi's press briefing that July morning. But here we are, and we keep going back to that question of how could this have happened 7 months later? Why was nothing done, given his awareness of the disbanding of the PKTT?
Absolutely. The president has a number of questions to answer, and he has to answer for acts of commission and omission. We started it with CIRA, and CIRA has a raft of recommendations pertaining to the look, the feel, the size, and the regulation of the private security sector. They need to implement that. We have other departments at the disposal of both the ministers and the president, like the Civilian Secretariat Police, that is tasked with monitoring and oversight. We have Parliament that has an oversight role, and you and I have already looked at the fact that oversight mustn't be, oops, sorry, I didn't see it, but it needs to be that ongoing monitoring of directives, of policy, and making sure that it's been implemented. Dating back all the way to the Goldstone Commission, unfortunately, that spoke at the role of the South African Police Service when it comes to violence and instability in the country, and what measures should be taken to civilianize them, professionalize them, and to ensure that they just not only uphold the law, but that they also follow the law. I mean, that they implement or enforce the law. More recently, we have Farlam, we have the panel of experts, and even before that, we had the NDP 2030. If we go back and revisit those measures that can be taken in the short to medium term to both deal with issues of integrity within these institutions, but also to deal with its systemic and structural issues, including the capacitating, resourcing, and professionalizing of the service. Those measures include, as we said, continuing with the civilization project, continuing to look at the actual structure and relationships between units. And we saw moves now to move the work of the PKTT to the serious and organized crime and to murder and robbery, for example. But we also see further tensions, unfortunately, that in the medium term has to be dealt with, and that between the Hawks and certain divisions within SAP. So clear lines of operational responsibility so that there's not a blurring of the lines and possible butting of heads. The president has a cabinet, the president has parliament, and he has director generals appointed by him, who he now, apart from the fact that we just had the GNU, the Government of National Unity, go to a 2-day retreat, there are forums that already exist where these issues can be looked at, see what recommendations exist, and the president needs to start exercising through his cabinet and his director generals political will to ensure that those recommendations that does exist actually start getting implemented, Iman. And that's something that can be done even before Madlanga provides its 3 monthly report, or even before the Ad Hoc Committee starts wrapping up its work, because there's already agreement on these recommendations, and they are captured in the recommendations of the Farlam Commission, the Zondo Commission, the panel of experts, and the NDP 2030, to just mention a few.
To close off, Eldred, two words come to mind: TikTok. TikTok, Mr. President,